The visuals in that chapter were mostly hilarious. Bernard really went immediately and ratted out the director and even took a helicopter. Bernard's loving it. He called Mustafa Mond and he's like, dude, you want to hear this. You know the director of hatcheries and conditioning? Remember how he went to this reservation 20 years ago? Well, I just found this chick and her baby, and the resemblance is striking. Would you like to meet them? Oh, wait. He flew to the warden's office, the warden of the reservation. I also got that confused as well, so luckily I know exactly what you mean. So first he flew to Santa Fe so that he could call somebody, because he's in the reservation, and I don't think they have phones. So he flew to the post office, made the call, and then he flew back to the warden of the reservation and told him, hey, dude, Mustafa Mond says I can take these guys. We're going on vacation. Bernard has never heard snitches get stitches. It would probably leave quite an impression on him. Scientific interest. Thank you, Anonymous, and thank you, chat, and thank you, viewer. Oh, God. It's getting juicy. Chapter 10. The hands of all the 4,000 electric clocks in all the Bloomsbury Center's 4,000 rooms marked 27 minutes past 2. This hive of industry, as the director was fond of calling it, was in the full buzz of work. Everyone was busy, everything in ordered motion. Under the microscopes, their long tails furiously lashing, spermatozoa were burrowing headfirst into eggs. And fertilized, the eggs were expanding, dividing, or if Bakhanovskified, budding and breaking up into whole populations of separate embryos. From the social predestination room, the escalators went rumbling down into the basement. And there in the crimson darkness, stewing warm on their cushion of peritoneum, and gorged with blood surrogate and hormones, the fetuses grew. And grew, or poisoned, languished into a stunted epsilonhood. With a faint hum and rattle, the moving racks crawled imperceptibly through the weeks, and recapitulated eons to where, in the decanted room, the newly unbottled babes uttered their first yell of horror and amazement. The dynamos purred in the sub-basement. The lifts rushed up and down. On all 11 floors of the nursery, it was feeding time. On all 11 floors of nurseries, it was feeding time. From 1,800 bottles, 1,800 carefully labeled infants were simultaneously sucking down their pint of pasteurized external excretion, and burp. Get it like a baby? Okay. From 1,800 bottles, 1,800 carefully labeled infants were simultaneously sucking down their pint of pasteurized external secretion. Above them, in 10 successive layers of dormitory, the little boys and girls who were still young enough to need an afternoon sleep were as busy as everyone else, though they did not know it, listening unconsciously to hypnopedic lessons in hygiene and sociability, in class consciousness, and the toddler's love life. Above these again were the playrooms, where, the weather having turned to rain, 900 older children were amusing themselves with bricks and clay. Bricks and clay modeling, Hunt the Zipper, and erotic play. Buzz, buzz, the hive was humming busily, joyfully. Blithe was the singing of the young girls over their test tubes. The predestinators whistled as they worked. And in the decanting room, what glorious jokes were cracked above the empty bottles. But the director's face, as he entered the fertilizing room with Henry Foster, was grave, wooden with severity. A public example, he was saying. In this room, because it contains more high caste workers than any other in the center, I have told him to meet me here at 2:30. He does his work very well, put in Henry, with hypocritical generosity. I know, but that's all the more reason for severity. His intellectual eminence carries with it corresponding moral responsibilities. A greater a man's talents, the greater his power to lead astray. It is better that one should suffer than that many should be corrupted. It is better that one should suffer than many should be corrupted. Consider the matter dispassionately, Mr. Foster, and you will see that no offense is so heinous as unorthodoxy of behavior. Murder kills only the individual. And after all, what is an individual? With a sweeping gesture, he indicated the rows of microscopes, the test tubes, the incubators. We can make a new one with great ease, as many as we like. Unorthodoxy threatens more than the life of a mere individual. It strikes at society itself. Yes, at society itself, he repeated. Ah, but here he comes. Bernard had entered the room and was advancing between the rows of fertilizers toward them. A veneer of jaunty self-confidence thinly concealed his nervousness. The voice in which he said, "Good morning, Director," was absurdly too loud. That in which, correcting his mistake, he said, "You asked me to come and speak here with you?" was ridiculously soft, a squeak. "Yes, Mr. Marks," said the director portentously. "I did ask you to come here to meet me. You returned from your holiday last night, I understand." "Yes, Bernard answered. Yes, repeated the director, lingering, a serpent, on the S. Then suddenly raising his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, he trumpeted. Ladies and gentlemen. The singing of the girls over their test tubes, the preoccupied whistling of the microscopists, suddenly ceased. There was a profound silence. Everyone looked around. Ladies and gentlemen, the director repeated once more. Excuse me for thus interrupting your labors. A painful duty constrains me. The security and stability of society are in danger. Yes, in danger, ladies and gentlemen. This man who he pointed accusingly at Bernard. This man who stands before you here, this Alpha Plus, to whom so much has been given, and from whom, in consequence, so much has been expected, this colleague of yours, or should I anticipate and say this ex-colleague, has grossly betrayed the trust imposed in him by his heretical views on sport and soma, by the scandalous unorthodoxy of his sex life, by his refusal to obey the teachings of our Ford and behave out of office hours, even as a little infant. Here the director made the sign of the T. He has proved himself an enemy of society, a subverter, ladies and gentlemen, of all order and stability, a conspirator against civilization itself. For this reason, I propose to dismiss him. To dismiss him with ignominy from the post he has held in this center. I propose forthwith to apply for his transference to a subcenter of the lowest order, and that his punishment may serve the best interest of our society, as far as possible removed from any important center of population. In Iceland, he will have the small opportunity to lead others astray by his unfordly example. The director paused. Then, folding his arms, he turned impressively towards Bernard. Marx, he said, can you show any reason why I should not now execute the judgment passed upon you? Yes, I can, Bernard answered in a very loud voice. Somewhat taken aback, but still majestically, then show it, said the director. Certainly, but it's in the passage. One moment. Bernard hurried to the door and threw it open. Come in, he commanded. And the reason came in and showed itself. You are the traitor. Okay. And you are the traitor. There was a gasp. A murmur of astonishment and horror. A young girl screamed. Standing on a chair to get a better view, someone upset 2 test tubes full of spermatozoa. I can't read this with a straight face. Okay, there was a gasp, a murmur, a young girl screamed, someone stood on a chair and spilled test tubes of sperm. But only 2. The cum tubes were spilled. Bloated, sagging, and among those firm, youthful bodies, those undistorted faces, a strange and terrifying monster of middle-agedness. Linda advanced into the room. Coquettishly smiling, her broken and discolored smile, and rolling as she walked, with what was meant to be a voluptuous undulation, her enormous haunches. Hello, boys. Oh, Linda. Okay, Bernard walked beside her. Okay, I'm about to throw up, actually. If you haven't caught up on the previous chapters, the director is the father of John. And he got Linda pregnant. And being pregnant is not okay in this society, but then she also got lost and had her baby. And he might have left her there on purpose, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. And Linda is like in love with him, and the director was in love with Linda, but he hasn't seen her in like 20 years. She fell or got pushed, who's to say? She stopped taking... She might have actually done it on purpose. Oh my, dude, it's too much for me. We gotta keep reading. Linda walked in. Bernard walked beside her. There he is, he said, pointing at the director. Did you think I didn't recognize him? Linda asked indignantly, then turning to the director. Of course I knew you. Tomakin. I should have known you anywhere, among 1,000. But perhaps you've forgotten me. Don't you remember? Don't you remember, Tomakin? You're Linda. She stood looking at him, her head on one side, still smiling. But with a smile that became progressively, in the face of the director's expression of petrified disgust, less and less self-confident. That wavered and finally went out. Don't you remember, Tomakin? She repeated in a voice that trembled. Her eyes were anxious, agonized. The blotched and sagging face twisted grotesquely into the grimace of extreme grief. Tomakin. She held out her arms. Someone began to titter. That means laugh. I feel like titter isn't a word that's used anymore. Somebody began to titter and laugh at her. What's the meaning? Began the director. Yeah, in a nervous way. To titter is to, like, laugh nervously, quietly, a little bit. like it's okay. What's the meaning, began the director, of this monstrous... Tomakin! She ran forward, her blanket trailing behind her, threw her arms around his neck, and hid her face in his chest. A howl of laughter went up irrepressibly. This monstrous practical joke, the director shouted. Red in the face, he tried to disengage himself from her embrace. Desperately, she clung. But I'm Linda. I'm Linda. The laughter drowned her voice. You made me have a baby, she screamed above the uproar. There was a sudden and appalling hush. Eyes floated uncomfortably, not knowing where to look. The director suddenly went pale, stopped struggling, and stood, his hands on her wrists, staring down at her, horrified. Yes, a baby! And I was its mother! She flung the obscenity like a challenge into the outraged silence, then suddenly breaking away from him. Ashamed, covered her face with her hands, sobbing. It wasn't my fault, Tomakin, because I always did my drill. Didn't I? Didn't I? Always. I don't know how. If you knew how awful, Tomakin. But he was a comfort to me, all the same. Turning towards the door. John, she called. John. He came in at once, paused for a moment just inside the door, looked round, then soft on his moccasined feet, strode quickly across the room. Fell on his knees in front of the director and said in a clear voice, My father! This could not be going worse. My father! The word for father was not so much obscene as, with its connotation, of something at one remove from the loathsome and moral obliquity of childbearing. Merely gross, a scatological rather than pornographic impropriety. The comically smutty word relieved what had become an intolerable tension. Laughter broke out. Enormous, almost hysterical, peal after peal, as though it would never stop. My father! And it was the director! My father! Oh, Ford, that was really too good. The whooping and the roaring renewed themselves. Faces seemed to be on the point of disintegration. Tears were streaming. 6 more test tubes of spermatozoa were upset. My father! Pale, wild-eyed, the director glared at him. Pale, wild-eyed, The director glared about him in an agony of bewildered humiliation. "My father!" The laughter, which had shown signs of dying away, broke out again, more loudly than ever. He put his hands over his ears and rushed out of the room. That was chapters 9 and 10, and next Monday we will read chapter 11. Whew, that was a lot. You are the father. Someone in chat said he really brought him out like Maury. Anonymous, give credit to Huxley for packing so much juicy into such short chapters. Dude, for real, how does he do it? One of the most talented writers ever, if I do say so myself. I'm not biased. I just think he's the best. Anonymous, thank you for $100, and credit to Aldous Huxley, where credit is due. I really recommend reading this book, and also reading the book Island, which was Aldous Huxley's last novel, and which he thought was his most important. So go read Island. I've also read Island on stream. If you would like to see our Aldous Huxley playlist, there is the link. Thank you, Mom.